Okay, I just got off the phone with Jabari, who's on the East Coast, and he is a really, really good ball striker. Hits his driver confidently, 300 to 330 every time. Really, really strong iron player. But his wedge game has lately been sort of letting him down. And because he's not been hitting very solid wedges, especially competitively, he's starting to get some doubts. So our conversation today was all about what it takes to be a dominant wedge player. But it starts with having a process that you can go through that you know is going to develop good shots, making enough of those shots that are good to get those results that you see, and then that creates the belief in your process. So it's kind of this really cool circle. I learned a lot of this from Henry Bolton, Jason Goldsmith, the guys with Focus Band, that once you have a process that you think might work and you do it and it starts creating results, good results, positive results, then you start to build this belief, and so then you do the process more and more confidently and better, and then you get even better results, creates more belief, you do the process more and better, and you can see how this just kind of builds on itself. So what's the process for being a really dominant wedge player? Well, in my opinion, it's eliminating variables. So eliminating face rotation, eliminating wrist hinge, and the reason I think we should eliminate face rotation and wrist hinge is because there's no extra added value in opening and closing the face on a wedge, and it's definitely not going to be more accurate to be rolling the club face open and closed through the shot on a wedge. And we don't need any extra wrist hinge because this isn't a shot that requires any extra power. And honestly, there really isn't any need for this vertical wrist hinge in the rest of our golf swing. We can hit full shots without that vertical wrist hinge. So what we do to accomplish this is we set the club up in forward shaft lean. So we set the club up in the way that we intend to strike the ball. So instead of setting the club up in a traditional way where the shaft is straight up and down, we're going to set the shaft up kind of pointing at our left hip bone. And that's going to mimic where impact is going to be. So we're just kind of mimicking our impact position with our setup. And from there, we're not going to change our wrist conditions. So we're setting the alignments, our impact alignments or our impact conditions at address. When we do that, it often moves our weight a little bit to our lead foot. And that's actually ideal. That's kind of what we want, because we want our weight to be on that lead foot at impact. That'll help us get a forward divot, move the swing bottom on the target side of the ball, and eliminate hitting fat shots or interacting with any turf before the club gets to the ball. So the first step in getting this sort of dominant wedge process going is setting the handle kind of aimed at the left hip bone. And as we do that, that's going to shift the weight slightly onto our lead foot. So once we've done that, it's all about developing a system that you can measure that's going to tell you how far each shot's going to go based on the swing that you make. So I really like for better players, and this is a pretty big time commitment, but I really like for better players like Jabari, I definitely use this in my own game. I like developing 3 positions, 3 backswing positions with 3 different clubs that gets you 9 shots inside about 110 or 120 yards, depending on your level. So the first position is a turn to waist high. And when I say the reason I say turn to waist high is because since we've already established that we're just setting the impact alignments at address and we're not going to do anything extra with our hands, we're just going to turn our shoulders until our hands are at about waist high. So we shouldn't have any extra added wrist cock. We may see the club go a little bit higher than that. That's just kind of natural flow. That's okay. But the main checkpoint is that our hands are at about waist high. So we're going to get set up in the impact alignments. We're going to turn to waist high. And we're going to turn through aggressively with our body. And in that shot, you'll see that I didn't have any flipping of the club, any face rotation. I just set impact, turn back, turn through. And on the through side of the shot, I was able to maintain those impact alignments into my finish. And so we should be able to, if we're maintaining impact alignments, if we're just rotating the body rather than hinging and unhinging, then we should be able to maintain impact alignments post-impact. So again, it's set the alignments for impact, turn back to waist high, turn through, and the alignments from impact should still be intact in our follow-through. So this is where the work comes in. It took me about a week of hitting 40 a day of those shots with my 50. I was playing a 55-degree wedge when I was competing. It took me about a week to find out what my carry number, my consistent carry number was with that first position takeaway with a 55-degree wedge, and I was hitting 40 balls every day at that position. Now that's not that much work, 40 shots a day at first position, but there's 2 more positions and then there's 2 more clubs. So first position, we do 40 shots with whatever your sand wedge is, your middle wedge, not your lob, not your gap. We do 40 shots there, just turning back to waist high, turning through. A couple big notes here. You should definitely be using a measurement system like a flight scope or anything that you have that can really give you accurate distance. Carry distance is our main concern. And then you should absolutely be using the same ball that you play with. And I know this is tough. If you're going out to a range somewhere to do this, you've got to have 40 Srixon Z-Star XVs or whatever you might play with. You've got to have 40 of those, or you got to go hit 10 and then bring them back. Best case scenario, you're in a setting like this where you can just hit 40 shots on a measurement device where there's no wind and you can be certain about the distance. So again, use a measurement device, use the same ball every time, preferably the ball you're going to play with. Obviously, we'd like to know exactly how far our ball flies. So position 1 is just turn to waist high. Position 2 is a turn to left arm parallel. So whatever that is for you, it doesn't have to be super precise, but it needs to be the same for you every time. So that should be a turn. For me, left arm parallel feels like this, and I think it's about right, left arm parallel. If you do 40 of those in 1 week, I think you'll find that you get a consistent number there. For me, it was about 75 yards carry. First position was 49, second position was 75. And then finally, I have a full turn, which is third position. So the left arm goes from left arm parallel to whatever it goes to for me, which is when I feel like I make a full turn, where I'm just turning back to maybe there. So it might be like 10 o'clock if you were measuring it like a clock. So first position's waist high, second position, left arm parallel to the ground. And then third position, I just feel like is a full turn. And my full turn sand wedge flew 100 yards. So it's interesting that the numbers are really, they're 25 yards apart. First position was 49 yards carry. That was my average number. Second position was 75, third position was 100. So anytime I had a shot that required a 49 or 50 yard carry or a 75 yard carry with a sand wedge or a 100 yard carry, I knew with certainty I could just make that swing and I would get that result. So once you've done it with your sand wedge and you really feel like you know these positions and you can say, okay, I just did on the 7th day, maybe you make 40 of these, so you get it set, an impact, turn back, turn through. You're hitting them consistently solid. They're flying consistently the same distance. Probably should be somewhere in the 42 to 52 to 55 yard range for that distance of swing with a 55 or 56 degree sand wedge. Once you really feel like you're hitting those consistently, then just slide in your lob wedge or your gap wedge and hit 40 balls with either one of those clubs. So the work is 40 shots with your sand wedge at first position, 40 shots with your lob wedge at first position, 40 shots with your gap wedge at first position. That's 120 shots at first position. Then you need to go to second position and hit 40 sand, 40 gap, 40 lob, and then you can go on to third position or full turn. So in one practice session, to get these numbers as dialed as they need to be, Jabari, for you, for me, as when I was competing, for anybody who wants extremely confident or dominant in their wedge game, it's 360 shots, and that's not counting practice swings. And if you're doing this, you really should be doing practice swings on every shot, rehearsal swings to really dial in the feel of what you're looking for. So for me, when I was doing it, when I was setting up my numbers, I would get my alignment, I would turn back, turn through, make sure I held my position, make sure everything was intact, so no rolling of the face, no hinging of the wrist. Just set it, turn, turn. And I would do 2 rehearsals before every shot, and I would do 120 sand. I actually would do 40 sand wedges, or my 55 degree wedge, and then I would do 40 lob wedges and 40 gap wedges all at first position. Then I'd go to second position, go sand wedge, lob wedge, gap wedge, then third position or full turn, sand wedge, lob wedge, gap wedge. And that is a wedge practice session if you want to be a dominant wedge player. So that's part 1. And part 2 is that once you've done these drills, you're going to be grooving a swing that you have so much confidence that you're going to hit it not only solid, but the exact distance. When you get out on the course and you've got 67 yards, I know for me that was a second position lob wedge carry was 65. So I could say 67 yards, well, I'm not going to spin back my second position lob wedge because I know it doesn't spin back. So it's basically a second position lob wedge. So I could get up there with confidence and just do 2 rehearsals, just set the alignments, turn back to second position, turn through, turn back, turn through, and then set my body up to the ball, to the target. Once I was aligned, just press play, make that swing, and I knew I was going to hit a good shot. And that confidence frees you up to make a great swing. You make a great swing, you hit that number, and the more you do that, the more confidence and belief you get, the more you run the process, and it just keeps going and going and going. So if you want to be a dominant wedge player, you have to put in some work, and I mean serious work. 360 shots a day for 7 days, and I think you're going to be a completely new player. But do that for a month, and it's not even going to be, you're not even going to be recognizable. So Jabari, I know you're going to do this, and I hope anybody else out there who's seen this video who has the time to commit to it, I hope you have the opportunity to try this because it will absolutely change your wedge game. And if you change your wedge game, you're going to change your handicap a lot.